The Electric Reliability Council of Texas, ERCOT's most recent large load working group report shows 425,000 megawatts of large loads seeking to connect to the Texas grid. That number is almost exactly 5 times the record peak demand of 85,500 megawatts set in August of 2023, though this year's peak is expected to hit 92,000 megawatts. But such interconnection numbers, they live in what I call stupid land. That magnitude of load will never all come online. There are a lot of speculative projects out there. Plus, there simply isn't sufficient material and global supply chains to support these volumes, in addition to large loads being faced by other utilities in the United States and indeed around the world. However, a significant portion of the Texas load may actually materialize, and ERCOT planners have been struggling to address this issue of interconnection. In short, how to reliably connect these new loads to the grid without breaking it. These new large loads, mainly data centers, their applications have come in so quickly in recent years that planners have been stuck with a conundrum. Under the existing process, each distribution company or transmission company conducts its own individual study, after which ERCOT reviews the requests separately on its own and attempts to determine how the new loads will impact power flows, what new transmission equipment will be required, and who will pay for it. But with so many applicants popping up so quickly, the outcomes of these studies kept morphing, requiring sequential evaluations and repeated studies that led to growing backlogs. Thus, after some consideration, ERCOT decided to develop a batch planning process, essentially hoovering up a bunch of projects, assigning them to a group, and then evaluating the entire system impacts of that aggregation. This new so-called Batch Zero process in Planning Guide Revision Request, PGRR 185, was introduced in March. The goal here is to speed up the process, making it more efficient, transparent, and equitable, while weeding out weaker and more speculative projects that drain scarce planning resources and, frankly, waste everybody's time. PGGR 145 would submit developers looking to connect loads of north of 75 megawatts to revised eligibility criteria. These largely boil down to stricter proof of project maturity and financial strength. In early June, ERCOT's board voted to proceed with this new approach with the first combined study referred to as Batch Zero. The next step is a Public Utility Commission of Texas vote on June 18th. Batch Zero is meant to be the initial transition to a continuous batch study process that governs future large loads. It's similar, in fact, to cluster studies for generation and storage, new supply assets, and other markets that have been established to make these asset interconnection queues more efficient. Here, it would allow ERCOT to allocate transmission capacity and plan system upgrades in a more coordinated fashion. To join Batch Zero, project developers must submit detailed project information to their transmission or distribution utility by July 10th, confirming control of sites with either a lease or showing ownership of property, while also disclosing whether they're pursuing additional interconnection requests in ERCOT or elsewhere, that in order to avoid double counting. They'll also have to deliver documents concerning regulatory approvals and anticipated engineering services. Finally, they must meet financial security requirements that they must pay $50,000 per megawatt of new or expanded requests with the transmission or distribution provider. ERCOT will then have until January 29th of next year to develop and deliver the Batch Zero interconnection study results that would include annual capacity allocations to each applicant through 2032, as well as suggested transmission improvements and related contribution in aid of construction CIAC costs to be paid for these grid upgrades. Just 2 months after that, on March 1st, the interconnecting large load entities, the ILLEs, there's a term for that, they'll have to formally accept their capacity allocations, committing to move forward to a refinement study phase. Armed with these inputs, the schedule then calls for ERCOT to deliver an iterative refinement study only 3 months later in June that will finalize the exact transmission facility improvements and the cost estimates for the committed load. After that, developers sign interconnection agreements with the transmission distribution service providers, the ones who own the wires, and they pay a non-refundable interconnection fee of $50,000 per megawatt of peak demand, which can come from their initial deposits. At that signing, the ILEs will also have to cover all direct CIAC costs. That CIAC provision matters because under the old way of doing things, utilities often provided allowances to offset costs of expanding infrastructure, such as substation upgrades, to serve these new loads. No more. Developers now have to pay 100% of all directly related costs, and utilities aren't allowed to attempt to recover any such costs from ratepayers. Nor can they commence any infrastructure upgrade work until the CIAC is fully paid. So only truly capitalized projects can move forward and other ratepayers are protected. Furthermore, any companies failing to meet milestones or bring facilities online per schedule are subject to losing their transmission capacity. The stringent requirements included here, both planning and financial, should do a pretty good job of weeding out the speculative phantom loads that have been clogging up the queue. The approach might also create competition for scarce resources, especially where current and planned transmission is constrained. The new batch approach here should tell us a lot, both in ERCOT and perhaps extrapolated more nationally, about which loads are real and which are speculative. They should also give us a better sense as to what can practically be connected to the existing and expanded ERCOT transmission system, finally pulling us out of today's stupid land into something more rational. It may also provide some valuable lessons to other utilities and grid operators, all of whom, having never seen loads of this magnitude or urgency, are pretty much making things up as they go along. Well, thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon.